Hi there. This has been complicated. Oh my goodness. Can you guys hear me that are here? Hi there, world peas. Hi, Randy. Hi, Susie. Yay. Okay, you guys are finding me. Oh my goodness. Okay, so I set up a live feed to be scheduled to start later, but then once it came, like, I couldn't figure out how to start that one. So if you were waiting for me somewhere else, that's why. And I had to start a new one. I'm so technologically challenged here. Anyway, hello, Coggy. Hello, Manda B. It's nice to see you. Thank you for joining. We'll wait a couple of minutes to get into the meet live, such as it is. Hope you guys are having a nice day. No, it's been kind of a week, hasn't it? Sorry. Things. But anyway, hopefully we can have a little bit of a time today. Hi, Deb. Meal prepping Coggy. That's good. I wish I could meal prep better. I don't do meal prep, but I also stopped eating meat this year. And I find that meal prepping with just like a lot of veggie stuff doesn't work super well. So anyway, hey, thank you guys for joining me for this part of the virtual kickoff celebration for the splash pad party this summer. I'm super excited to be a part of it again this year. Jen puts on the best events. I love working with her. And in case you've watched the video, my podcast before, and you don't recognize this location, I can't remember if I've recorded in here before or not, to tell you the truth. I'm in my bedroom because our neighbors on the other end of the house decided today would be a great day to run a bunch of chainsaws and put up a ladder right outside the porch room. And I'm like, hey, what you doing? He's like, oh, I'm getting ready to paint this part of the house. Remember? I'm like, awesome today. That would be great. So anyway, I moved in here. Hopefully it'll be sort of quiet. Plus it's sort of lunchtime-ish, so maybe everybody's taking a break. Oh, hi. Mucklepoos was here. Rose. Okay, well, I'm going to start. I've got a few different things, and then we can just chat, or you can ask questions later on. But I do have a couple things I wanted to talk to you about, splash pad party related. And if I miss a comment that you say, I will try to catch them all later, but just bear with me because I'm really new to this live streaming thing. But anyway, I wanted to share with you my exclusive colorway for Splash Pad Party this year. It's called Bright Spots, and it's a self-striping, of course, because I do self-striping and I love doing self-striping. But that's what the skein looks like, and here's what it looks like knit up. This is actually a new striping pattern for me. It's a 5-stripe pattern, but the colors will alternate. All 5 colors will be like narrow, wide, narrow, wide, narrow, wide, and then they'll alternate to the ones that were wide first will be narrow. So it's basically a 10-stripe repeat, but it's just the same 5 colors. So anyway, I'm sitting right in front of a window, so it's sort of blowing out, but it's all up in the shop. You can go to www.fibernymphdyworks.com/shop and you will see this. Whoopsie, sorry. It's listed as a dye to order listing, as are a lot of my new colorways at this point, just because of logistics and places to house yarn, since I've got my whole show inventory to house right now since shows aren't happening. Anyway, by doing it as a dye to order listing, you get to pick from, I think I have 6 different yarn bases up for this one that you can pick from. So you'll get exactly what you want. You won't have to worry about them selling out. I'm going to turn these around as quickly as possible for you guys, since this is for the splash pad party. And since I'm a Pro Shop sponsor, you get extra points. Or I always feel like I sound like Drew when I start talking about points. But anyway, you know what I mean, hopefully. Anyway, thanks, Coggy. Yeah, so anyway, if you have any questions about the colorway or anything, let me know. I just wanted to do something really bright and happy because quite honestly, I think we all need some bright spots right now in life. And this last week has basically reinforced that because, you know. Okay, so this is my exclusive colorway. But I also wanted to show you another new colorway. Actually, it's a new collection that I just put out this past week. And it's my next Color Play series of yarns. And it's Color Play 3. So this is the self-striping version of Color Play 3. And this was inspired greatly by the dogwood tree that blooms right outside our house. It's so pretty every year. And every year I think about it too late to actually jump on it and do a colorway. But this year I was ready. So this is the colorway in striped version. And I did just about every version possible of Color Play 3. So this is a 5-stripe colorway as well. So you've got the wide stripe, which is a real pale ivory, which I'm calling Dew. And then these other 4 colors. So we've got dappled, blush, trying to remember all the names that I gave them. The brown is loam and the green is, sorry. But anyway, so you've got this self-striping. And then I did it on, I have a whole bin here. I'm just going to cart the bin over here and show you and hopefully not bump the computer too much. I did a variegated version. So here's the variegated on my poof base. So this is that slubby base that you're seeing a lot of these days. I just love this base and I really need to knit a sample out of this so that people can see how it knits up. But this is the variegated on that. This is the variegated on Sunshine. And then here's the variegated on Fluff, which is the mohair silk base. So these are all 3 options for the variegated, but I also have other yarn options up as well, because again, they're dyed to order, so I can give you lots of options. Yeah, I love the slubby base too. I wish I started a top with it and realized it was definitely not the right pattern for that yarn. So I had to kind of not continue that one. Anyway, here's all 3 of those bases again with a speckled version of the colorway. And I actually really, really like this version a lot. It's super delicate. And it's sort of a deviation from what I usually do because I'm all about the bright colors, you know that. But every once in a while, I really like something that's just a little more gentle. So that's Color Play 3 in the speckled version. And again, a whole bunch of yarn base options. And then we've got the semi-solids. So sorry, I'm trying to wrestle all of them. So here's all 5 of the semi-solid. So it's all 5 of those colors, semi-solid versions. Again, lots of yarn choice options for you in the shop. I know this one looks just like it's undyed, but it's not. Trust me, it's actually dyed, again, with a really light ivory dye. It's just really very delicate and beautiful. And then, oh my goodness, sorry. This is not a prime setup place in here for me in the bedroom, but I did mini skein sets. These are only available on Bounce or Bedazzled, but that's usually what people want them on. I didn't do any of this color combination on Mountain Tweed because speckling doesn't show up super well on Mountain Tweed since it's a tweedy base. I just didn't think it would do super well with this color combination. So all of the bases I'm dyeing this up on are, you know, the natural, light natural colored. So anyway, the mini skein set includes all 5 colors plus 1 mini that has all the speckles. So there's that. And lastly, fiber. So it's a really, really pale, I keep saying pale. I need another word. The whole braid is dyed in the ivory color, and then there are splotches of all of the other 4 colors, but the fiber just makes that dye diffuse. And so it is just such a delicate look. And I think once it's spun up, it'll be just such a beautiful light color. I don't know. It would depend on how you spin it, obviously, but. So those are the options for the Color Play 3 collection, which again, just came out this past week. And I'm really excited about. I didn't mention it before when I was showing you, and I'll show it again since we've had more people pop in. Hello, everybody who just came in. Hi, Jen. Hey. Katie, Trish, Nadine, thank you for coming by. But again, when I was showing this is the my Splash Pad Party exclusive colorway for this summer, and it's called Bright Spots. It's available in the shop now. Hi, Jen. Thank you so much. I'm glad you love them. Yeah, it's available. Again, it's a dye to order. So I will get these dyed up and shipped out as quickly as possible. I may have put, I don't know what I put as the turnaround time in the listing, quite honestly. It probably says 2 to 3 weeks or 3 to 4 weeks. I'm going to get them turned around as fast as I can, like faster than that, because again, I know it's for the event this summer and it's only 2 months long. So I will get these out really quick to you. What do I want to tell you? Oh, the other thing I was going to mention, if you go to the Downseller Studio Ravelry group and check out the coupon code thread, I do have a coupon code up there. So if you're ordering the exclusive colorway or anything from my shop now through the end of the Splash Pad Party, you can use my coupon code, which is SplashPad15, which will get you 15% off your entire order. And the other thing that I'm doing now through at least through August is I'm doing free shipping on all US orders of $50 or more. So hopefully that'll be helpful to you guys. Today is actually the last day of my spring cleaning sale as well. So you might find some bargains in there today if you check it out. Now I'm dry, sorry, having some tea. Okay, hi Sandy. Yeah, so let's see, what else? I don't really have anything else in here new to show you, but I have some questions that, oh, you know what, that's a lie, sorry. I lied, I have one more new thing that I want to show you. And then I'll answer some questions that people asked on Instagram. This is a shawl I just finished. I've been so into crochet lately and I love it. So this is a half a granny square shawl. Pattern is Designs and Tees, or Church Mouse Yarn and Tees on Ravelry. And I used all DK weight and worsted weight scraps for it. And it's just so bright and happy and so much fun. I used the equivalent of just under 6 full skeins of yarn for this, but again, they were all leftovers that I had on hand. So it was great to get all those leftovers out. Thanks, guys. Thanks, Deborah. Yeah, Jen, I sell fiber. I keep thinking about that because you're spinning now, so that's exciting. Anyway, so yeah, I think what I'm going to do, because I've had some comments from people saying they thought this was really cool, but they don't have enough leftovers to really be able to do this. You could obviously do it with any, like if you wanted to alternate 6 skeins of yarn, you could do one big like this. But if you want to do it with all these really bright, happy colors in it, I think I'm going to put together some kits. And I'll probably do them in DK weight because then I can put both non-sparkly and sparkly in there. I do have a few, yeah, like this gray here. I don't know if it's going to show up, but that's my Beguiled base. Beguiled is my sparkly DK weight. So yeah, it would probably be the equivalent of one of my Serendipity sweater sets price-wise. But if you wanted to do a nice big shawl, even if it wasn't this pattern, but you just wanted to do something that you had a lot of bright colors in, I think that could be really fun. So I am going to work on dyeing some of those kits up. Those will be in stock once I get them done. So you can just order them and I can ship them out to you. Yeah, double stranding sock yarn does work too. World Peace mentioned that. Sorry, I'm looking at the comments, so I'm trying to answer comments, but I know it might be confusing to you if you're not following the comments. But yes, I actually did a pair of shorty socks a couple of months ago, holding 2 strands of fingering weight sock yarn together. Like I was using leftovers and I did that. and they turned out great. Actually, I have them on. No, I don't. I'm lying again. Sorry. This is a DK weight pair of socks I have on, but it's not those. They did turn out to be about a DK weight. They're really heavy. They're going to be great for next winter. A little too warm for right now. Actually, these are sport weight. I'm wearing a sport wear pair. Sorry. Okay, so I just wanted to show you this mainly because it's super happy. It's huge too. I think I did 56 rows, including the 3 setup rows, and it is well beyond my wingspan. And I'm 5'4", so it's probably, I'm going to say it's at least 6 feet long, if not longer, and it goes down below my butt in the back. So, excuse me. Anyway, big shawls are awesome, Coggy. Oh my gosh, I love big shawls. And I laugh because I was recently going through all of my shawls because I used to be a huge, a huge shawl knitter, not huge shawls, but little shawlettes. When I first started knitting, those small shawlettes were the thing. Everybody was knitting them. And they're nice because you can wear them kerchief styled and everything like that. But there's nothing like a big squishy shawl. That's like my Hedgewitch shawl that I did, what, 1.5 years ago out of my Ridgetop yarn. Oh, gosh, I love that shawl. I wear it so much just because it's super big and squishy. How did I like the pattern? For the half a granny square, I thought it was great. It's very easy to follow. I'm pretty new to crochet, like doing crochet with a pattern. I've always known how to do a granny square. Well, not always, obviously, but when I was a kid, my grandmother taught me how to do chain stitch and granny squares and everything, but I'd never really learned how to read a crochet pattern. And I was always sort of intimidated about learning how to work from a pattern with crochet because it seemed really complicated. But I started not long ago working on the Lost in Time shawl by Joanna Lindahl. And that's been actually very good as far as learning new stitches because she has each step of the pattern written as well as a picture. Okay, maybe not a picture for everything, but when there's more complicated things, she's got a picture. And it's been so helpful. I still have to work on that when I'm by myself and don't have disruptions, so I can really think about what I'm doing. But it's coming, like it's coming along, and I feel like meditative, kind of like the motion of casting on, like when you do a long-tailed cast on, that's a really just meditative motion, I think. You tried to make one like that and the top edge was a bit janky. Yeah, I didn't have any problem with the top edge. I did have to look up what a treble crochet was, and I realized that the terms are different in the US versus the UK. So that can be a little confusing, but what I thought was a treble crochet and what I was doing at first was not a treble crochet. So then I finally looked it up, and I don't even remember what YouTube video it was, but I looked it up and figured out what to do. And that did make a little bit of a difference on the upper edge because that last stitch there was a little bit longer, and that helped a lot. So yeah, I would say that would probably be the thing that made a difference for me once I figured out what I was doing, because you can even see the ones at the beginning were shorter, and then they get spaced out as they go along. So anyway, so that's my shawl. You used a different pattern. Yeah, this one, it's a free pattern. You do have to sign up for the Church Mouse Yarns and Teas newsletter to get it. But I didn't have a problem doing that. I just did that and was able to download the pattern. And so, yay. How many times do you pull through 2 loops? Single, one, and so on. Well, for the treble crochet, you wrap twice before going into the hole and pulling the yarn through. So then you have to pull through 2 loops. Now I have to think about it. 1, 2, so 3 times? 2 times. 2 times or 3 times. Now I'm confused. But the key to it for me was learning. I had to wrap twice before dipping down into the hole. That was the key to that treble crochet. So anyway, 3 times. That makes sense. Okay, why don't I go on here and answer questions? Sorry, I have to put my glasses on. So I have, as far as I can see, I think there's only 3 questions. I put this up kind of late last night. I'm not going to talk about them in order. I'm going to start with the easy one first. What is your favorite Pittsburgh or Western Pennsylvania food? Sunnyside Knitter asked that. That's hard because we've got some interesting foods here in Pittsburgh. I would say probably as like an everyday kind of food, it would have to be a toss-up between pierogies and halushki, which if you don't know what halushki is, it's basically noodles that have been combined with chopped up cabbage and onions that are sauteed. The traditional recipe uses like a ton of butter. I don't usually use all the butter. I use olive oil for most of it. And actually, I don't put nearly as much oil in as they call for. And then a lot of salt and pepper. And it's so good. It's so weird, though, because that's something you'll actually find at like kids' soccer game concessions or the high school football game concessions. They sell halushki here in Western PA because it's a thing. And then I would say the other thing that's really a Pittsburghy food is the permanente sandwich, which I used to know the origin of that. I think it had to do with the steel workers when they were, either going to work, getting off their shift, and they needed a quick meal. Permanente Brothers, which is a restaurant, they started, maybe they were a deli originally, I don't know. I could be making that part up now. But anyway, they started making the sandwich that had like the steak on it and the steak and cheese, and then the French fries and the coleslaw all went on it at the same time. So everything was compact and, condensed. Everything was in the sandwich. And so that's still a big Pittsburgh thing, the permanente sandwich. I love that. Again, I'm not eating meat now, so I'm not really sure how good it would be without the meat in it. But it is a very interesting sandwich. And I'm sure there's a lot of other versions of that. I've seen that sandwich a lot of other places now, but I'm pretty sure it originated here in Pittsburgh with permanentes. So I would say those would probably be my top 3 picks for Pittsburghers or Western Pennsylvania foods. It's interesting because, Pittsburgh is very much a melting pot of a city. I mean, from back in the Industrial Revolution and when the steel mills were really big, I mean, people were coming from all over, and Pittsburgh still has its ethnic-based neighborhoods, like Bloomfield is the Italian neighborhood, and there's Polish Hill, which is pretty self-explanatory. I'm trying to think of some of the other ones. My mother's family grew up in Troy Hill in Pittsburgh, which I think was largely German. We're German. Yeah, so there's just a lot of different neighborhoods around Pittsburgh, and that obviously contributes to the foods, the cuisine community. And it's really cool because you can get pretty much anything here in Pittsburgh, and it's pretty awesome. So hello, Karen from the UK. Glad to have you here. Okay, so that was my first question that was asked on Instagram. Another one that was asked, and this is a knitting related one, and I have some samples to show you for this. Lisa Cole, Koehle 42, said, could you talk a little bit about fixing mistakes in previous rows? For example, dropping a stitch and unraveling down to the mistake and then picking it back up again, or tips on how to pull out your work when you're working in the round and picking up the stitches on your needles without picking up the wrong stitches. So I am going to try and demonstrate both of those things. Hi, Robin. Deb is saying terminal produce workers in the strip in the early 90s were the origins of permanentes. Oh, okay. You know what? I probably knew that at one point, but I forgot, and I didn't have time to look it up before I started, so thank you for that. Yeah. The Strip District is a very interesting place to go to shop too. There's a little bit of everything down there. Now that I don't live as close to the city, I don't get to go down there very often. So, okay, so I knit up a sample here. I'm going to answer the first question from there first, and it was about dropping down to fix an error. So I knit up this little swatch. I thought doing it in yellow might help since it was light. It's a 2x2 rib, basically. I'm sorry if the clanking of the needles is painful. But anyway, I'll try to hold it like this. I should have probably done a dark color since I'm somewhere where it's being all blown out. But anyway, I purposely made some mistakes. So right here, instead of these being knit stitches, I accidentally purled a couple, and then over here, where they should have been purled, I knit a couple. So I'm going to work through that and just show you what I do. I mean, it's not difficult, but if you're not used to doing it, it can be a little intimidating. I know when I first started knitting, I basically just, if I found an error, I tore back and reknit, and that's fine, but you don't have to do that. It's obviously a little bit more efficient if you can fix your error. So we will start here. All right, so now I've come to this spot in the purl row. This is going to be difficult. how am I going to do this? If I turn my camera that way, you're going to see the big mess that I had to move off my floor so that I could set up here. So I don't want to do that. Jeez. Okay, I'll stand up. All right, so this is a purl stitch next on the needle. And it's correct. It should be a purl stitch, but down 1, 2, 3, 4 rows, accidentally put a knit stitch in. So I'm going to pop this stitch off the needle altogether. So it's just hanging there. And then I'm going to just gently pull that out. So I've pulled out 1 row, 2 rows, 3 rows, and now I'm down to the one that I did as the knit stitch, the 4th row. So I'm going to put that one back on the needle, on my left needle, and I'm going to gently, with my right needle, lift that yarn that I knitted over that and pull the stitch out, put it back on the needle. So now I have the stitch that was supposed to be knit plus the working yarn, which is the second one. And I'm going to pull that working yarn one under and put it back on the needle in the right way. So there you go. Now it is a purl stitch. Now I'm going to sit back down to do this part. I'm going to pick those all back up. I don't think I put that on there quite right. Sorry. This is not a great setup for showing this kind of a detailed thing, I don't think. But all right, there we go. All right, so now it's on there as a purl stitch. So now I need to pick up those other 3, and you'll just see those 3 strands that I pulled out from the upper rows, they look like a little ladder. So I'm going to just put each one on in turn and work it in turn. So the first one, I'm going to take my left needle and I'm going to dip it down underneath that first ladder, and I'm going to manipulate it so that that ladder piece is on the left side of the stitch. And then I can put my right needle in and pull it through the working stitch. So now it's over on my right needle as a purl stitch, and I'm going to just slip it back over to the right needle, the left needle, because I have to do that 2 more times now. So under that stitch, put it to the left side of the stitch I want to work, pull it through, and put it back on the left stitch. So hopefully you're able to get the idea between what I'm showing you and what I'm saying. I'll do it one more time. Okay, so there, I'm back on track. All those stitches in that column are now all purl stitches. And the next one, I would need to drop down and do that again. I'm not going to bother for this sample just because I don't think you were able to see that super well. But I'm going to go ahead over to where I made the mistake where I should have some knit stitches, and we'll do that one. Okay, so here I am. This column, you can see there's 2 purl bumps here. Those should be knitting stitches. So I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to start by dropping the first stitch off. Now, if you have 2 stitches in a row or multiple stitches in a row that you've done incorrectly like that, you can drop them all off the needle at the same time if you are feeling brave and you want to. Like in this case, I wouldn't have a problem doing that, but I'm going to show it to you just one at a time because I think that's actually the safer way to do it. And if I was knitting it, I probably would just do it one at a time, quite honestly. So I'm going to drop that down, take out 1, 2, 3 rows, get to the row where I made the mistake and put that stitch, oh, sorry, I'm not even on the screen, put that stitch back on the needle. Okay, and then I'm going to slip it over to the right needle so I can use my left needle to lift the incorrect stitch off. And then I'm just going to use the 2 needles. You're basically just rearranging where your working yarn had been. So since we want to turn this one into a knit stitch, you're going to have your working yarn. Yeah, working yarn was to the left. So now I've got a knit stitch and I've just looped it over. I mean, you'll be able to see as you go where things need to be in order to make the stitch. It's a matter of doing it in the same order that you would do it when you're actually purling or actually knitting, but you're just kind of retrofitting it in there. So now I'm going to pick up that ladder again. So picking that ladder up with my left needle. And since this is a knit stitch, I'm just going to have it on there. I don't need to move it. It's going to stay there. And I'm going to take the stitch that's to the left of the working needle or the working yarn and lift it over. Yeah, I'm going to try to get closer for you. So again, I'll pick up the next strand in the ladder. I'm going to leave it there to the right of the stitch and then carry that stitch over that ladder. And the same way with the last one. So now we're all set there again, and I've got a nice column of knit stitches. And again, the next stitch over was another mistake, but again, because of the lighting and this, hopefully that was helpful. I'm not going to bother to do that other one. But yeah, I mean, I would recommend just kind of dropping down 1 stitch at a time if you're making an error. It's a really good practice to try to read your knitting as you go, especially if you're doing something a little more complicated and you're not sure. It sometimes will take a row or 2 to see if that you've made a mistake, but if you make a point of looking on a fairly regular basis, you'll be able to catch your errors before you're, 10 rows past them or something. And that's helpful. So the other part of that question, yes, a crochet hook, Trish, is a great way also to pick up stitches. I use that especially in socks because I seem to have a habit of sometimes like the first stitch of my needle will drop off and suddenly I have this ladder. And a lot of times I don't notice that till several rows past. And that's a really good one to take a crochet hook in and do that. I think I started doing it just with the needles, with the knitting needles, just out of sheer laziness, to tell you the truth, because I don't always have a crochet hook handy. Here, let me see if here's a crochet hook. Here, I'll go back to this for a second. The crochet hook method, here, I'll show you the crochet hook method with this next row. That would be a good idea. All right, so here I am. I've got the next purl stitch that should have been a knit stitch. So again, I'm going to take that off the needles. I'm going to drop down 3 rows. And in this case, I'm going to drop down and take out that 4th one too that I did incorrectly. So now I'm going to take my crochet hook and insert it into the stitch. And since we're doing knit stitches, this is actually pretty easy. You're just going to take the needle and pick up that first ladder, or hook, I'm sorry. Pick up the first ladder and then pull it through that working stitch. And then pick up the next ladder and pull it through the working stitch. And just keep working your way back up. And then once you get it all fixed and you're up at the top, you can put that stitch back on your working needle from the crochet hook. And it's fixed and you've got a column of knit stitches. And you can do that same thing with the purl issue. You're just in here. I'll get to a purl place and I can show you that. I'm going to read some comments here. Your 6-year-old granddaughter just learned to knit. Sometimes the friendly knitting fair. Oh, yeah. Yeah, the friendly knitting fair is nice to have around. I've done that for friends too, and my daughter when she was learning to knit. Okay. Like somebody about my crochet sweater. Sandy, you asked, did I start the crochet sweater yet? I have not. But that was because I was not going to start it until I finished that shawl. So now that I'm finished with the shawl, I can start the blanket or the sweater guilt-free. All right, I'm going to drop down here and show you how to do the crochet. Or I'm sorry, show you how to do the purl stitch. How am I doing on time? Oh, it's 1:40. Wow. Okay, so if you want to fix a purl stitch that way, let me see, I haven't done this in a while. You basically, you're going to do the same thing, except you need your ladder to be in front. Okay, wait a minute. I need to think about this. I don't know that I've ever done this with a crochet hook, honestly, with a purl stitch. The ladder is going to have to be in front because that's your working yarn comes to the front when you do a purl stitch. So then, okay, you're going to go into, let me get it on the hook. You're going to go into the stitch from behind. And I know this is going to be impossible for you to see, right? But I'm going in from behind so that I can then pull that ladder through the stitch to get the purl stitch. Because if you think about a purl stitch, you're doing that from behind. Obviously, on a little piece like this, it would be super easy to just take it and flip it around and do it as a knit stitch on the other side, which is also probably what I would do in this particular instance if I was using a crochet hook. Yeah, it's just all in what is easiest for you. Yeah, I find that awkward to do with the crochet hook. But again, it's probably just because I've come up with my own little way of doing that. Yes, pearls are easier to fix with a crochet hook from the wrong side, Deb. You are absolutely correct. So anyway, all right, that's how to do that. The other thing I was asked was about if you have to take stitches, like you're working in the round and you need to take your stitches off the needles for whatever reason and put them back on. How do you do it without picking up the wrong stitches? I'm not 100% sure what she meant by wrong stitches, because obviously if you're pulling your needles out, you're only going to have one round of live stitches. I mean, even if you have to rip back, you're going to have one round of live stitches. But here's what I do. I think maybe she may be asking about how to do it. You do it with needles too, Jen. Yeah. Once you learn how, it's pretty easy. All right. So when I'm taking my needles out, let's say, okay, so I started this and I knit some ribbing here. We'll pretend this is a sleeve, okay? So I knit the cuff and then I went into the knitting and I think, oh, I was supposed to change my needle size and I didn't. So I've got like 3 or 4 rows of knitting here that are on the wrong size needles. And sure, you could tink back, but that would take a while. I would probably just rip my needles out, tear back to the beginning of or to the end of the ribbing and start over. So the first thing I would do, especially if I'm working in the round, whether it's, this is obviously magic loop. If I was doing it on a 16-inch circular for a hat, I would do the same thing about knowing where the beginning of your round was. Take a stitch marker, you know, an open stitch marker, and put it in, find the row that you want to go back to, and then go down to the stitch, your beginning of round stitch in that row. So that's not only going to mark the beginning of your round, but it's also going to be a reminder of where you want to stop ripping. So there's my marker. It's in there on that stitch, and I'm going to rip out those 3 rounds. So here we go. We're going to pull the needles out. Here we are. We're going to pull the needles out. Okay, so they're off the needles, and I'm going to rip back to where my marker is. One more. Okay, so I ripped the whole way back to that stitch that has the marker on it, but I didn't rip that stitch out. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to take another set of needles that are actually smaller than the ones that I had been working on originally. So I had knit this all on 5s. And let's say I really needed to go up to 7s. Even still, I'm going to pick these stitches up on a 3. This is a 3. You could use any size that's smaller, and that's the smaller the better. The smaller, the easier anyway. It just makes it easier to get in those little working loops that are loose without putting excess stress on them. Because what's going to happen is once you have that work the whole way through, your needle's all back on there, you're going to be working with the needle that you actually want to be working with. And that right hand needle, that is the one that denotes your size stitch, your gauge. The left needle is just holding it, holding the stitches. It's really not doing anything with your gauge. So that's why you can put it on the smaller needles. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put my needle into the stitch that I actually didn't rip out. So I'm going in there, and then I'm going to pop that yarn back out. The only reason I do that is because that keeps that stitch from wanting to keep going beyond. If I already have a stitch marker in there, and I can just pop my needle in there. I hope that made sense. Okay, so then I'm going to just thread this smaller needle through all these loops. What I'm not going to do is I am not going to worry about whether or not I'm putting them on in the right direction. Because as you know, like when you have let's imagine this is your knitting needle. You know, stitches can either sit this way or this way. And when you're knitting, you want the front leg. Well, imagine this is like you're working this way. You want that front stitch, the leg, to be towards the front, not towards the back. But when I'm picking up to do this, I'm not going to worry about that, because on my next round, when I first start knitting, it'll be very easy for me to fix that. And my main goal at this point, sorry, I'm not even showing you what I'm doing. My main goal at this point is just to get these stitches back on the needle. Now, since I was in Magic Loop, that can be a problem too if you're not exactly sure where your center was. But that's another thing that you can kind of fix once you have these on. So I'm going to put this many stitches on, and then I'm going to pull this through. One thing you can do to help keep these from unraveling more or from dropping down is to kind of pinch right below where you're working to help stabilize your fabric. And then every once in a while, a stitch is going to want to pop out. Like, see that one right there? The working yarn popped out, and that's fine. I'm just going to pick up that loop. And when I get to that point, when I'm knitting back around, I will pay attention to that, and I will pick up that working yarn just like we did with, you know, fixing the wrong stitch by dropping down. I'm just going to pick up that little ladder strand, so to speak. Sometimes it's almost easier to let some of them pop out because then that gives you a little bit more stretch to work with the stitches you are trying to pick up. Okay, so I've got everything back on the needle, and obviously you can see some wonky strands there because those are ones that popped out of the stitch, and that's fine. So I have this on this tiny, tiny needle. Definitely don't want to forget to switch back to a good needle or the correct size needle. So we're going to pretend that this is, say, a size 7. It's actually the same one I had in there, but Susan, you're saying, I find it easier to pick up the stitches as I tink back on that last row. That's also a good option if you don't mind tinking. Again, I just tend to be a little bit lazy sometimes, but yes, I've done that too because, you know, if you rip all the way back, and that's especially helpful, I think, if you're ripping something back that's in a pattern. I don't personally have a problem just ripping willy-nilly with something that's in stockinette, but if it's something that's like in a ribbing or heaven forbid in like cables or lace, ripping back lace is a whole other story. We won't go there. We're keeping things simple right now. But yeah, tinking back the last round can definitely be the easier way to go. All right, so I'm going to just start knitting with the right hand needle will be the correct size that I want to be using. And then the left hand is just that smaller needle that I picked up with. And I'm going to keep knitting around. Now see, this one was put on incorrectly. So the front leg is actually to the back. So what I'm going to do to fix that is I'm going to knit through the back loop, and that'll turn that stitch back around to be in the right position. So if you happen to have picked them up the wrong way and your front leg is to the back instead of to the front, just knit through the front loop. Just make sure you didn't completely twist the stitch. If you did that, you're going to have to move it around. You did lace very slowly. Yeah, anything having to do with fixing lace, you do very slowly. Oh my gosh, whose class did I take? I took somebody's lace surgery class one time. I'm totally blanking on the name of the designer. She's one everybody knows. Anyway, I think it was an SSK class one time, and oh my gosh, it was amazing. You were basically pinning out the lace, kind of like you were dissecting it, and you pinned it out, and she had you put the different strands in different pins, and then you worked each thing back up. Oh my gosh. It was a little nerve-wracking, even just being a little sample piece, but it was a very good lesson. So, okay. Romy. Yes, Romy Hill. You're right, Nikki. That was whose class it was. It was a very good class. If you ever have a chance to take class from her, I suggest taking it. She's a wonderful teacher. Okay, so I got through the first half. I still didn't actually count to see if I have the right number of stitches on the front and back, but I'll get to that. Unless it's imperative that you have the right number of stitches for whatever you're doing, I wouldn't worry about it on this first round back through. So I'm knitting along till I get to one of the stitches. Okay, so this next stitch here, you can see there's the extra stitch that popped out. So I'm going to do that same thing I showed you before, where I'm going to take my left needle and just dip it down underneath that strand. And now I have the strand on the needle next to the stitch, and then I can lift the stitch over that strand. And so now my stitch is back on there correctly, and now I can work it. And now I have 2 in a row that came out. And I'm going to do that same thing though. I'm going to dip down and pick that strand up just for the first stitch. Actually, before I do that, because not only do I have the strand that popped out, but this is also on there in the wrong way. So I'm going to actually just turn it around. So now it's going the correct way. Now I'm going to dip down in there and pick up the strand and loop that stitch over and then knit it. And then I'll do that same thing for the next one, although the next one is on there in the right way. Okay, so now we're going to continue around. And I've come to another stitch that got dropped down. Okay, and now I'm to the end of my row. So that's how I would do that in general. Now, if I want to make sure I've got the same number of stitches on each needle, I would count. And then if I have to adjust that the next round, I will. Yeah, I would say the only other thing to keep in mind is as you're picking the stitches back up, even with the smaller needle, just take care that you don't split the stitch, because that can be kind of easy to do whenever you're picking stitches up like that. But otherwise, it's pretty straightforward. Again, if it's a simple knit or knit and purl, or, you know, and not a complex pattern. But that's the general gist of it. So hopefully that was helpful. Oh, just the look of the pinning freaks you out. I know it's intense. Oh, yeah, it's funny. You would pull back and reknit, Trish? Lace or just anything? Anyway, well, you're welcome. I hope that was helpful to see that. Let's see. I had one more question. Let me make sure I have just one more question, see if any more came in. Nope. One last question. The Hobby Ho asked, where do you stand in regard of the current protests? Obviously, it's not a knitting related question, but I will address it since I didn't say it had to be knitting related. It's also kind of a hard question to answer because it's pretty wide, but I would say in general, I think peaceful protests can be a positive thing. When they turn into violence and damaging property and things like that, that's not good. That shouldn't happen. I don't believe that violence of any sort can be edifying. There's nothing positive about it, and it doesn't redeem another negative. You know, a negative does not help another negative. The current situation, though, is just so there's so many elements to it, and it's not an easy thing to answer. You know, what happened that started all of this should never have happened. It was heinous. I mean, there are not enough words to even describe, you know, what happened with the police. I find it very hard to talk about this. And the murder, and that it was seen by so many people, especially the way our media is now. In a way that's good, people are aware of it, but in another way, when you see it over and over and over, it just has so many ramifications. So anyway, I would say I think peaceful protesting can be very positive. I obviously am not in favor of something that's going to cause more harm and more destruction to people, to lives, to buildings, to anything. I don't think that's the greatest way to go. I don't really know what else to say about that. That could be an entire hour-long live feed as it is, but that's that's not what we're going to talk about right now, but I did want to at least try to address that question since it was asked of me. Yeah, it's hard, and I'm still processing a lot of it too because I wasn't online and I wasn't watching the news a lot yesterday, and I know a lot happened yesterday and last night. I was outside gardening a lot of yesterday, actually. So I'm probably not super up to date with everything that happened. I know Pittsburgh did have protests that ended up with a lot of people being arrested and things. So yeah, it's just a hard situation all around from the very beginning of everything that has gone on this week. And I would love to see not just our country, but our world, but especially our country get to a point where these things aren't happening like to anyone. It's heartbreaking to know that people still feel like it's okay to treat other people this way, and it's not. So anyway, yeah, I hope you guys will enjoy the splash pad party. I'm looking forward to being a part of it. As I said earlier, again, here is my exclusive colorway, bright spots for the splash pad party. And it is in the shop. It is dye to order. It'll get shipped out to you as soon as I can possibly ship it out to you. Sorry, I keep looking at the wrong spot. I don't know why. I think of the time countdown. Anyway, so if you'd like to enjoy this for the splash pad party, head on over there and I'll get it dyed up for you as soon as possible. Don't forget about the coupon code I have available throughout the whole splash pad party. That's splashpad15 for 15% off anything that you order. And you can place as many orders as you want. There's no limit on that. I think it's just, I have it set up just for in stock. No, I don't, because it wouldn't apply to the dyed order. That didn't make sense, Lisa. It's on anything except if you're going to order my my holiday countdown sets, which do go on pre-order tomorrow. I should mention that. That coupon will not be applicable to that, but it's pretty much applicable to everything else except gift certificates. Gift certificates and the holiday countdown sets. Yeah, the Holiday Pops countdown sets will go up for pre-order starting tomorrow, and they'll be up the entire month of June. So yeah, you don't have to rush at it tomorrow and do that if you don't want to. Lots of options, as always. I try to make them very budget friendly and very, you know, yarn preference friendly. So check that out. And if you have any questions, feel free to let me know. I think I'm going to wrap this up. Let me see if I missed any questions. It's hard to talk about, but yes, you were right, Jen. It is very hard to talk about. Yeah, it's good to know that there are people in our community who share that feeling that this is hard, and yeah, I agree. Katie, thank you. Thank you for being there. I'm going to miss some people. Thanks, Susan, for watching. Have a good day too. Let's see. Yes. Yeah, there's still some other Splash Pad Party events going on today. So head on over. Yummy Yarns is answering more now, and I'm going to go. So take care. Bye.